coming at you live. This is Matt Kunerth, Matthias's older brother. You're gonna be sticking around with me all day, seeing what we can do to hopefully finish up most of bean harvest. We'll see how everything unfolds. If you look closely, you can see the deer tracks, which means we must be getting close to the John Deere combine. The fun with the cutter bar, sickle section, and guards continues. What I thought was nothing more than just one missing bolt this morning. Turns out here in the center, we've got a little bit of a, I think a bent joiner piece almost. So what you saw us working on there inside is we ended up needing a spacer here that both bolts must have broke loose yesterday and need to replace. So we don't have the spacer. But as you can see, we can just take one of the sickle sections, grind it down, and see if we can make that do. So that's what we're working on right now. Here would be a portion of it that we've taken off. And a couple more sickles into the graveyard of all the sickles and guards that we've had this year. So we jumped out here now this morning. So this is us now the second time we've been in this field. So this would have been our first bean field that we started harvesting 2 weeks ago, Dad?
2 weeks ago, yep.
And now we're getting stuff that was the second replants. Some of the stuff that we probably won't be able to get to was third replants.
Yeah, that's a third. We're gonna come into that.
So this has been one of those fields that's been a challenge all year from a planting standpoint, and now continues to be a challenge from a harvesting standpoint. One downside of all this start and stop that we're having to do now is we're kind of going through these pumpkin patch areas of beans that are finally ready now, is just the loss of harvest that we have because we aren't able to keep beans running through the machine. So it's not like when you're mowing your lawn, you can start in one area, stop in another, and work your way around whatever works. It all gets done. From a harvestability standpoint, ideal is definitely being able to go through continuously and keep the combine processing grain throughout. So we are going to see some losses here. One way to measure that is getting out and actually seeing what actually blows through. So for every 4 beans that you see in 1 square foot behind the combine, that's 1 bushel per acre of loss. You can see all the beans that we took out. Now the ones that Dad is working on and taking out right now, and the ones that he's having to leave. So we were in here 3-4 times for planting. We're gonna be out here at least 3 times for harvesting. To our second bean field of the day. This one's got quite a few more replants. Honestly, this is probably the most beans we had to go around. There's probably 40 to 50 acres out here that we have yet to get. Well, now, unfortunately, I have to hook up the bean head again. So this is always some of the pain points of switching from field to field. There is the time that it takes to get the beans harvested, but there's just as much, if not more time, getting everything disconnected, reconnected, moved just a half mile further. As we're driving by with the grain cart, you can see the beans that we're able to harvest and the beans that we'll have to come back for. So if you notice some of the green beans, they're actually dying right now because of that killing frost that we had, would be 2 mornings ago, which is very much appreciated for us when we come out here and are actually able to harvest 100% of this field, so we can hopefully get them while they're dead. So you can see this is just a swath that we would have taken here this morning of the stuff that we're right on the edge of being able to harvest. So these are still able to break right open in our hands easy enough. Then you get into the stuff that just isn't quite there, and even the beans inside, you can see just how inflated those are yet, haven't dried down. And then we take a few more steps further in where we've got even more green beans, green pods, and see how that continues to vary. So this is where it's important for us to get that killing frost, so that way everything can die off and break open. Because if we end up trying to harvest these beans, run them through the combine, we aren't going to be able to get these pods busted open. So everything's going to run right through, either out or into the grain tank, and that's going to lead to a lot of trouble. So looking at these leaves, these looked entirely different here just 2-3 days ago. So the fact that they are now dying off is a really good sign for us that we honestly were pretty nervous about coming in, how these replanted beans that were put in here, July 13th was the final day, how everything was going to shape up.
The dirt's picking up off the stalks.
Oh, you got on the wrong side.
This will be the last time we have to deal with the bean trailer for a while now, since we're going to be moving over to corn. Thankfully for corn, we've got the folding head that makes it a lot easier to maneuver around, so when we're going from field to field, it eliminates one other person's job being in charge of getting the bean head where it needs to go. And just like that, we got the truck lined up. We now have the final, well, not the final, but one of the final loads of beans that's going to be dumped into the bin. Now going to fully transition everything over to corn. That'll be what we'll do the rest of the day. I do want to get a grain sample, see what this is actually going to look like. Alright, so we ran our moisture sensor and we're looking at 9.9% moisture. So looking at that, I am a little surprised that it didn't end up being a little bit wetter, just because, like you see here, green pod obviously had some green beans that we unintentionally didn't want to get in there, but just the nature of the beast, they do. Have been talking to guys, so for me, all over eastern South Dakota, southwest Minnesota, everything has been running really dry this year. So the 7%, the super dry year, this is definitely that year where we're seeing a lot of loss just because the beans aren't as wet as what they ideally would be. Elevator starts discounting at 13% moisture, so anything we have drier than 13%, we'd be better off if we had a little more water, because water is basically free, but we couldn't pay enough for water. We could in the early part of the summer, but as the summer kind of persisted, we definitely turned into one of the drier August, Septembers that we've had here of recent. So for us to still have 9.9% moisture, very glad for us to get these beans out, and we'll see how everything keeps in the bin.
Here's a visual of some of the drowned out spots back in July. You can see the planter out there, and then here's that same field just taken recently. You can see all those beans that replanted are still living. Here's another field, big drowned out spots. There's that same field just today, and then here is one other large drowned out spot. And here are the brown beans that are finally starting to turn and die off.